Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome to the counter clipping show for Friday. This is counter clipping show number 66 for Friday, March 25th, 2022. So we skipped the show on Monday because I was in Seattle, so we might talk about that. I did post a bunch of pictures over on social media, so check those out if you want to. There's links to all of that in the video description. So we're going to do probably a little bit of talk about that. We have a GMT update this week to talk about. I'd like to thank everybody for stopping by, especially at, the kind of non-regular time. We will be back at the regular time this coming Monday. So just 3 or 4 days from now, there's another counter clipping show coming up. So as we get back to the regular schedule, gaming resumed this week as we played a little bit of the Third Winter. That's going to continue and probably for quite some time, I would think. But we are still also simultaneously playing the Blitzkrieg Legend. That's probably close to winding down, and when it gets taken down, we're probably going to set up Forgotten Battles and run another playtest game of that. We're still looking for folks, so if you're in the central Ohio area, feel like playing OCS, even if you're new at it, that's okay, we'll teach you. We play once a week on Thursday nights in that group. Get in touch with me at ardwolfslair@gmail.com. ardwolfslair@gmail.com. So as you can see, we are trying desperately to finish off the Temnevulen, which is pretty good. I'll talk about a new Scotch I just got a chance to try on the trip. And we're clipping War for America, which showed up yesterday, courtesy of Compass Games, and which the unboxing video released earlier today. So check that out if you want to see all the counters fall out of the sheets. And they're self-punching counters, as we say in the business. So check those out. We'll talk about the GMT update in a minute, but first of all, I would like to say hello to Captain Asparagus, Srelnikov, Achilles, John Clark, Jeff Beeler, Manders, Tim Zales in blistering Tempe, Arizona, Fucko live from Chicago, where he went without consulting me. I would have, in retrospect, there's a Scotch you might be able to get in Chicago that you can't get here. We'll talk about that. Messing Up Rules, Robert Moffat, The One True Phlegm, Daniel Silverthorne, James Whitmer, Todd Walser, Jeffrey Wesovich, Beat Cafe, Rick Cox, Chet Bell, Clint Randall, Ray Musselman, Harry Z, Joel, Stellar Conquest, Clint Randall, I think we got to you already, Ag Ray Day, John C. from the sunny Philippines, Nordic Maelstrom, Bill Simone, Fast Hines, William Bird, Kilroy, if Kilroy was here, Jacob Guernsey, Vince Ree, Stigler is in the house, Jeff Anderson, Richard DeFortuna, Charles Latorre, John Longshore is here, Joe Perez, and looks like that's it. I don't know if we're going to have a light night or a busy night or what, because it's Friday, who knows. I don't know. So I think we're going to need a double compartment for these, I think. I'm still getting this whole game into one tray without too much trouble, but there's a lot of low-value American militia here. So we might talk a little bit about this too. It's a good-looking game. It's a very attractive component-wise game, and there are some, as I discussed in the unboxing video, there's some cool things about it. So if you're into bourbon, you will find Kentucky a very hospitable place. I am less into bourbon than I am into, there's more of these, than I am into Scotch. So there's, that's just me though. So, but you could still get a better Scotch selection in Kentucky than you can here in Ohio. So what do we got going on? The other group starts to meet again after a couple weeks off due to my trip and other stuff next Wednesday. So we're going to pick up the Europa game at that point. And I think we have landed on probably 2 or 3 more sessions to finish that. And then after that, our target will be Pacific War, which is fully punched, clipped, and organized in 4 of these giant clear container store trays. I may move that at a future time to a counter tray solution, but I am definitely not ready to do that yet. So that is how we're going to do that. I also got Victor. This is what kind of sparked the topic for tonight, which is Vietnam in wargaming, and books and stuff too, and maybe even movies. Vietnam is punched and clipped as well. Now I got that in 3 counter trays. It's a little bit tight in 3 counter trays, but not I think not problematically so. And I need more counter trays to do it. Everything else except for Salerno is at least I guess I could do Into the Woods, because I think that's going to be a 2 counter ship game. So I might be wrong. I might end up being wrong about that. One thing I haven't seen, and I guess we'll talk about the Ken Burns Vietnam too. I haven't seen the Ken Burns Vietnam, so I wonder if that is on streaming anywhere. Okay, so what showed up this week since I got back? I fortunately managed to have nothing show up while I was gone. We flew out to Seattle on Thursday. We got back very late Monday, and is that even accurate? Yeah, that is accurate. So we had a great time. We got to go up at the top of the Space Needle and take pictures and have dinner and all that. That was definitely a a winning experience, even though it was not winning for my wallet, if you know what I'm saying. So. John Madison looks like he picked up Army Group Center as well, showed up today in the oddball 2.5-inch box. So William Ahrens from Plainfield, New Jersey, thanks for stopping by. Marty says, pick up Europa, the next step is to throw it in the trash. Well, it's an experience, right? It's my second Europa. I guess we kind of saying the third, because we kind of played Balkan Front in there too. If Vietnam is not something that I've been interested in from a wargaming standpoint for very long, so that's why I've seen the Ken Burns Civil War, which is excellent. It's not very military history, but I expect the Vietnam will be the same way. But if it's on Prime, that's great. So I know some of that stuff keeps popping up. I did go to Mox. So Mox Boarding House, which is a chain of game store / restaurants that's up there. As a game store, it's pretty good. They got a lot of stuff. As a restaurant, we didn't sit down in the restaurant. We sat in the gaming area, and you could still get food and stuff. And the food is kind of appetizer-y type food rather than entree type food. So as long as you don't mind that, you're good to go. It was fun though, and there's a couple locations up in Seattle, and it was pretty good. Thanks to Just a Guard, who was kind enough to stop by for lunch with us as well. We ate generally really well. One of the things I had, I wanted to go to at least one seafood place. Now, my wife is not a big fan of seafood, but she did like what she got at Elliott's something or other. It's down on the Sound. It's fairly pricey. I got a seafood risotto, which was really good. She got the crab cakes, which she liked a lot, even though she doesn't like seafood. I got some raw oysters, which I like. Nobody else touched that. And I tried, for the first time, Bowmore 15-year-old. Now, I have had Bowmore in the past, in a couple of different places. There is a low-priced single malt Scotch called McClellan's. Not spelled like George McClellan, there's a D at the end. But McClellan's is owned by, it's not a real distillery, it's just a label, and it's owned by Morrison Bowmore. So for example, if you get the Highland, then you get whatever they have at the Highland distillery that's owned by Morrison Bowmore, and if you get the Isla, you get whatever's owned at the Isla distillery that's owned by Morrison Bowmore, which of course is Bowmore. Now, I've also had Bowmore Legend, which is a also pretty low-priced Bowmore that's got no age statement on it. You don't know how old it is. You probably are right in guessing that it's super young, and it is. It's got a weird off taste that I think is an off taste anyway, that no amount of water really gets rid of, to the point where you're watering it down to water and you still have that wangy taste. Both the Bowmore Legend and the McClellan's, which is really just Bowmore, have that taste. So they had a Bowmore 15 at Elliott's, and I tried that because I'm like, you know what, I can get exactly 0 Bowmore here in Ohio. So, and I've always heard that older Bowmore is excellent. and it is. This stuff was good. I will be delighted. It runs, as far as I could tell, it runs about $100 a bottle where you can get it. I do, John, I do sushi and sashimi. My wife does not, so I haven't had a chance to actually have sushi or sashimi for quite a long time. Every once in a while we'll go to some place where they have such a thing. But I'll totally eat that. I got no problem with that. And I like, when I've had East Coast oysters, it was in Florida. But it was years ago, so I don't know, but it did seem different. They seemed brinier, at least the kind I got. So I don't know if that's a real thing or not. I think Frasier was set in Seattle, now that I think about it. I didn't really remember that. I didn't watch much Frasier. I watched a couple episodes. Clam chowder. Yeah, we did go to the public market, the Pike Place Market, which is a lot of fun. There's all kinds of weird little stores, including some cool bookstores, a lot of little weird bric-a-brac shops. I don't know how they can afford to pay the rent for what that must cost. I'm lucky, Stigler. I'm lucky I get her to eat any kind of seafood, let alone raw seafood. She was not into the raw oysters, so. Which, I get, people don't want to eat certain things. I sympathize with that, but I do like seafood, and I will eat it raw if that's the appropriate thing. We also had gas station sushi. Gas station sushi is real sushi that you can get real botulism from, real salmonella. So no thanks. You want to lose weight, by the way, in a hurry? Get salmonella. That'll do it. I leave it as an exercise to the reader to figure out which exit the weight leaves by. Because I've had salmonella. It was not fun. And it can last for, it can hang around for several months. So it really, really sucks. So, yeah, my advice is to avoid anything remotely questionable for sushi. So. The oysters were just an appetizer, though. I also had a Manhattan while I was there, and the Manhattan was decent, but the Scotch was really good. And when I saw that they had a halfway decent Scotch selection, I was like, well, hell, I might as well get something. Might as well get something I can't get in Ohio, right? So, all right, where are we at here? Let's talk about the GMT update that hit this week. So, let me hop over there. Okay, here we are. Very good. All right, so news from Gene. So we're going to talk about, we are not going to talk about, if you want to hear about GMT's position on the Ukraine situation, here it is. If you would like to support Ukraine, then I have provided a link to a page that Modifius put up. They're an RPG company, but they helpfully put together a variety of different vetted places where you can help support Ukraine. There's a link to this in the video description. So I don't want to talk about it other than that. New P500s include, well, we'll get both of these, Henry and Norman Conquest Men of Iron Volume 5. Sneak peek for the Charioteer game, which looks pretty snazzy, I gotta tell you. And probably is going to be fun. Here's a sneak peek counter sheet for Fields of Fire Battle of the Bulge. If, again, as usual, if you want, to get all of the little nickel and dime details out of the update, go read the update on GMT's website. I am just going to hit the highest points here. GMT merchandise, you can now buy Twilight Struggle, coffee mugs, and shot glasses and stuff like that. Tabletop Simulator update, Next War, Next War. Those Next War games are kind of game I wouldn't play on Tabletop Simulator. But, if somebody gets use out of that, and it looks like there are some subscribers, which doesn't mean anything. I'm subscribed to a bunch of stuff that I've never even opened. Then, okay, and Fire in the Lake, of course, which has several products incoming, several expansions incoming. Custom dice for Twilight Struggle Red Sea, which will be included with Twilight Struggle Red Sea, and they do look pretty cool. And in fact, I'd like to get a pair of those dice for the regular Twilight Struggle, but they didn't mention that. Maybe that's something that will come up. All right. P500 editions, 2 reprints, Bandits and Tomahawks, which is pretty new, so that's gotten received fairly well. And I'm going to go into all of these. Space Empires, if you're into Space 4X games, and I am, and although I haven't picked up Distant Worlds Universe yet just because of I have wanted to spend the money yet, frankly. Maybe in the next paycheck. Space Empires is very good. I do like Space Empires a lot. And Bandits and Tomahawks has been pretty well received. And 23 orders on the reprint so far. 16 on Space Empires. But this is the 5th printing of Space Empires 2. Norman Conquests. Okay, so this is Men of Iron Volume 5, game designed by Ralph Shelton, who was apparently doing some of the development work for the series before. But all of the previous 4 games in the series were Richard Berg games, right? So I was concerned that, is anybody going to continue this series now that Berg has passed away? And I'm happy to say that Ralph Shelton will be doing that. So here we have a Volume 5. I think it's got 7 or 8 battles in it from throughout the Norman period. So this looks great. I immediately, upon seeing the update, put in my order for this. I have just screwed this up. So you can of course get Soviet dice from elsewhere, and I'm aware of that. Yeah, Ritter Krieg is where I would typically go for that kind of thing. But Norman Conquests look really good. Now, Henry, on the other hand, which is at 269 pre-orders, is another entry in the very quickly growing Levian campaign series, which I still haven't played, by the way. I'm aware of Jean-Michel, or whatever his name is, Grosjean's playthrough series, which are excellent, and I have actually watched those. So if you want to see how to play that, those are a really good place to start. But I have not actually had the chance to play it yet myself. It looks pretty good. I haven't ordered this yet, but I'm very likely to. I have all the other stuff on order. This is going to be like Volume 5, and only 1 volume is out so far, which, tells you that there's still a huge bottleneck at GMT for production. We're going to get to that in a minute, too. Recent P500 editions, Cuius Regio is the 320, which is pretty good. Sovereign of Discord, which is another expansion of Fire in the Lake. That's the early war stuff. Is way over its number. North Africa 41 is way over its number. Ted's I, Napoleon, which looks very interesting, which I also haven't ordered yet. I mean, you'll understand why I haven't ordered some of this stuff that looks really interesting, because I just got annihilated in January by 7 games. Plantagenet, which is another Levian campaign game, which is way over its number, and Baltic Empires is over its number as well. The Mets, the Mons game from Jeff Phipps, that's one that's not on the list here this time. That's a very promising looking game that I would encourage you to take a look at. But go look at BGG, because there's updated rules that have significantly streamlined the game. And maybe we can talk about that more in the future. So we've covered the new ones. New P500s on the horizon, another CDG solo pack, a new game with a Britannia theme, a new coin series game. That'd be a shock. Game number 1 in a new operational World War II series from Rick Young. Did I miss the Fast Action Battles series news? Let me... because I don't remember seeing it. Yeah, okay. So the big news for the FAB, or Fast Action Battles series. There's a Bulge game that's out that was pretty well received. There's a Sicily game that was out that I actually had for a while. It's a block game, a relatively traditional block, hidden info block game. Looks fairly interesting and fun, but there were 2 games that were just kind of languishing on P500. So GMT has decided they're going to cancel the series completely. They're removing the Crusader and Dubno, and retooling those games to fit a new operational system that Rick Young has designed, that will be a cards and counters system rather than a blocks system. So I don't have any information about that. I skipped the Salerno mounted board on purpose, because it's available. Get it if you want it. I'm told that you actually can fit it in the box with a counter tray. So The Fast Action Battles had fans, so I think it was just kind of not getting enough attention, and the numbers just weren't coming through, is what it sounds like, and that's something that I had noticed, that those were sitting around for quite a long time, without necessarily moving very much on the number. So that's the new Operational World War II series from Rick Young. We presume. Coming events, GMT East, that's coming right up. Of course, Buckeye Game Fest is coming right up as well. That's not next week, but it is the week after, so we're going to have to talk about that. We'll talk more about Buckeye Game Fest next week. And I'm not sure how I'm going to handle the Monday night show from there after we had struggles with bandwidth. We might try something different, I don't know, or I might just drive home and do the show from home. That's possible, since it is just like a 20-minute drive. Spring 2022 weekend at the Warehouse. So April's going to be a big month for GMT-sponsored events. April 21st to 24th. You got GMT East at the beginning of the month and weekend at the Warehouse at the end of the month. And these look like fun events. Driving out to them from the Midwest, however, is going to be a big pain. All right. PunchedCon is in the UK, 13-15th May. There is a Wargaming events calendar linked in the video description, so check that out if you want as well. There's a Frank Chadwick ETO series update. I'm gotta tell you, that series looks good, looks very promising. I am not really going to get very excited about it until there's another one up for order, because they've just been taking a very long time to resume production on those games. That doesn't, that's not a slight on the games. It's just that I've got other stuff to worry about that I have, or I'm going to have soon, rather than something that I don't know when I'm going to get. So a whole bunch of other little things here, digital games, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for the charging and shipping. Okay, so they have finished shipping Barbarossa Army Group Center 2nd Edition, Into the Woods, Pacific War, Plains Indian War, Salerno 43, plus the mounted map, plus Vietnam 1965 to 75. They also have charged for the second printing of U.S. Civil War, which that's been out for a long time. Brant, that link has been in the video descriptions of this show for months. Next charge will be on Tuesday, April 12th for Almoravid. This is Volume 2 in the Levian campaign series, and I do have this on pre-order and have been looking forward to it quite a bit. So, very interested to see. I think we're going to do the British next here. That sounds right. So, that's the next thing on the schedule that I'm going to get hit for. However, loading approval, CDG Solo System, which I have not ordered. I probably ought to, because I think I have all of the games that applies to, but then again, I'm not that big of a solo player. Churchill 3rd printing, I don't need that. I got the first printing. Empire of the Sun 4th printing, highly recommended if you don't have it already, and you should. Red Storm Baltic Approaches, which I have gotten on order. So, might as well buy all of the Baltic Storm, or the Red Storm stuff. At the printer, Charioteer, Fall of Saigon for Fire in the Lake, which I have ordered. Flashpoint, South China Sea, that's Harold Buchanan's promising-looking new game. Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe, that is ordered by me and very highly anticipated. Musket and Pike Dual Pack, finally at the printer. I'm happy to report that. Some people have complained about the counters because they're changing the style on the counters. That doesn't bother me at all. I am fine to have games with, without counters that look like everybody else's counters. Skies Above Britain, which actually looks really interesting, and Stalingrad 42 Expansion, which is also ordered by me. That's basically a scenario pack, like a small counter sheet and a scenario, but it looks pretty good, and I think Mark Simonich said that it's like his favorite scenario for the game so far. Next up, going to the printer in March, Battles for the Shenandoah expansion for Death Valley. That's a must-buy, in my opinion. Fire in the Lake 3rd printing. Twilight Struggle Red Sea, and then next in the pipeline, Banish the Snake, CNC Ancients Expansion number 5, 2nd printing. Fields of Fire, The Bulge, Mr. President, which actually looks pretty neat. Norway 1940 for PQ-17, which I'm very curious to see that as well. Although I think I had it on order at one point, and I canceled that order, and I'll probably reorder that, depending on the timing. Paths of Glory Deluxe, and Red Dust Rebellion. Red Dust Rebellion is the sci-fi coin game, which looks pretty cool, actually. The opportunity... I'm really curious to see how well the designers leverage the opportunity to create a setting around the coin mechanics. Very curious to see how that works out. And then in the art department, there's not that much new here. Russian campaign's still there. Congress of Vienna, I think, might be new. People Power might be new, too. That's another coin game. And the set in the sunny Philippines, I believe. And then they put nearing art department readiness. They didn't remove Crusader. So apparently Crusader had hit its number, but you can't go to the page anymore because they killed the whole series. So, all right, let's try to catch up for on the chat here. So, let's see here. A lot of good stuff. Let's go back here. All right, so Barbarossa Iron Crusader is big, right? That's why I think I need 3 counter sheets, 3 counter trays for it. It's a very large package. It's, I think, 5 counter sheets. So, you know, it was an OCS game, it would be 10 counter sheets, but it's way less marker heavy for one thing. There's still a lot of units. So, I'm impressed with it from what I've seen so far. I'd like to do some video on it, but I got to find time to do that kind of stuff. Bill Simone's going to be in Kentucky. We mentioned that already. I think we're a little bit behind. One True Flem says, Third World War, Vietnam, Pacific War shows up this week with the wife at home. Oh, boy. So, Jeff Beeler is descended from a United Empire loyalist who raised his own unit, Adams Rangers, which fought and was captured at Saratoga. That's some interesting family history right there. I don't have anything that interesting. I've got a couple of amusing, possibly baseless anecdotes. So let's see here. So there are a set of like Bakelite tiles for Twilight Struggle that replace the counters. Those actually look pretty neat. The set's a little pricey. It's the kind of thing I would be tempted to buy when it's on sale. Marty says mounted boards are unnecessary for war games. I agree. You know, it's nice when you have them. I don't mind having them, but I also want to be able to fit the damn thing in the box. So that was my bigger concern. And I didn't think that would be possible. I have ordered North Africa 41. I'll order whatever Mark Simonich wants to do in that family. But Brazen Chariots is very good, too. I mean, I suspect that without... Okay, so I'm doing this from memory, right? North Africa 41 is going to cover all of the Operation Crusader Western Desert campaign type of stuff. Where Brazen Chariots just covers, well, pretty much that, actually, at a much bigger scale. So, or I guess just Crusader rather than the whole Western Desert. So there's that. I'm trying to picture the scale. I've played Brazen Chariots, but it's been a while. So, block games are hard to solo, and I suspect that you're right. Mashing P, that does help suppress interest in those games. The Battle Board Game Bloke. First of all, welcome back. The Battle Command series of games is a successor to the old Fast Action Battles. Volume 1 will include Operation Crusader and the Bulge. Well, it might be the successor, but if it's not a block game, then it's hard, based on the information we have today, to see the resemblance, right? John Longshore asks, if you can only take one game to a desert island for the rest of your life, which game do you take? Traveler. There you go. If you're looking for a war game, I think the probably the obvious answer is ASL, because you can, but that's largely a nomenclature thing, right? When I say I have ASL, I mean I have a ton of stuff for ASL. I just don't talk about, say, OCS in the same way, even though I have a ton of stuff for OCS. And if I could pick a series, then I might pick OCS, because, it depends who's on the desert island with me, right? So yes, Brent, your continuous thanks are appreciated. Captain Asparagus, Space Empires 4X needs a PC iPad version. I would probably buy a mobile version of that. Not on iPad, because I don't have an iPad, but the fact is that there's a huge amount of competition in the computer game space for Space 4X games. In the tabletop space, there's not very much competition at the moment. And I have a kind of narrow definition of 4X, right? Where you got to have all four of the X's. Twilight Imperium, for example, which is a game I like a lot, only really has 3 hexes. So John Madison is asking the question of second editions on all of the Barbarossa series. Yes, that is the intention. That is this. They have said that. The order in which that is planned to occur is to do. I'm trying to figure this out here. Is to do Army Group North next, then Army Group South, and then Typhoon. And then presumably we can move on to the second, later in the war games that we never got to see. That would be pretty cool. I'm a sucker for stuff on the Reconquista, so that's why I pre-ordered Almoravid. And the system looks promising too, right? It's operational medieval, which is not something that we see very much. Well, Brant, you're going to see us set up Europa at Origins, aren't you? So, Iggy Crickdahl says that Space Empires 4X is on Board Game Arena. Yeah, it's on Vassal too. But, if you want to play it on Board Game Arena, go ahead. It's the kind of game that I would just as soon probably play on Vassal. But, if you're anti-Vassal and pro Board Game Arena or Tabletop Simulator, then whatever. I don't, you do what works for you and the people you're playing with. So, John Madison asked if we have light and power. That is a significant question, yes. So, a question that we need to answer. Everything looks okay? Everything looks okay. Very good. All right. So, yeah, just a ton of stuff came in. The other things that came in are, and there'll be unboxing videos. The first unboxing video will be next week for Bonaparte in the Quadrilateral from Kevin Zucker. So, and OSG. Now, we've got this significant problem here, right? I've managed to talk Kevin into selling me one of the rare extra boxes for the last success. So hopefully we'll have that coming pretty, and that's ordered, paid for. So we're going to get that pretty soon, and we'll have a matching set of the entire series. So very excited to have it. All those, by the way, are punched and organized. I think I'm going to probably do. I have a pretty good chance, by the way, of finishing War for America tonight. So I was actually going to do Vietnam tonight, but I kind of finished clipping it on my own. So it started to squeak suddenly. I did do so this is the 2.5. I did do almost all of Pacific War except for the ships, which isn't that many counters, on the 2mm. So Brant, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully you can come back later. Marty says, well, Marty's implying anyway that Nevsky turned out not to be very interesting. Certainly, it's an opportunity to do games on the appealing thing for me about Levian Campaign is the fact that it's operational. It's kind of point to point, but it's operational, and we've seen very little operational medieval stuff, and it is medieval, right? And I don't have that much medieval stuff, right? I've got maybe a couple of oddball things, and Men of Iron, the Men of Iron series, and that's pretty much it. And frankly, based on my level of interest, Marty, I've looked at the errata sheet for War for America, and while it is a whole page, I don't see, there's really nothing on there that's like, oh my god, I can't believe they screwed that up. That's going to really make things bad. So it's less alarming than it might appear at a glance. Based on my level of interest in tactical medieval, I am very satisfied with Men of Iron. Just like, based on my interest in the Age of Reason period, I think I'm going to be very satisfied with Musket and Pike whenever it comes out. So that will be cool. My Typhoon is weird. It's got like the counters are all really dark, and I don't know why, because it's not like they're moisture damaged or anything like that. But the counters seem darker, and I've like looked at other copies of Typhoon, and I owned it back in the day and don't remember that. And other copies I've looked at aren't like that. I'm not sure what's going on there. So, well, so Stigler, I think there's a line, right? So let's dive into this. We're not going to get to Vietnam quite yet, I guess. So there's a line, right? And you get to decide where the line is for you. If you decide that one page of errata, of relatively minor errata, but there's a whole page of it, is just too much, you don't want to deal with it for War for America, that is your call. This is a free country. You have the right to make that decision for yourself. Part of why we do things like unboxing videos and these kinds of things is to kind of keep people informed about that kind of stuff, because otherwise it might be hard to tell, right? Other people might have a greater or lesser ability to tolerate errata from you, and again, that's fine. That's their prerogative. I have no problem. I make these decisions for myself. I have sometimes decided, yeah, I don't want to deal with that, and I have sometimes decided, yeah, based on my interest excuse me, in the topic, my strong interest in the topic, I am willing to put up with this game that has a bunch of problems and that I have to noodle around with. So, you get to make those decisions. We get to make those decisions. We have that agency. There's also a line between somebody who is kind of an asshole and somebody who published books through a neo-Nazi press. So let's talk about that, because I think it's going to come up. So while I was out of town, actually, the news came out that M.A.R. Barker, the now deceased M.A.R. Barker, former professor of linguistics and South Asian languages at the University of Minnesota, and creator of a very early RPG, The Empire of the Petal Throne, and its setting, the world of Tecumseh. Turns out he authored, and this is all confirmed, right? So this is not speculative. The Tecumseh Foundation, that is like his literary executors, have confirmed all this. Published a novel through the national, through an actual honest to God neo-Nazi press. So this was not cool, and people went batshit about it. There's, I'm sure, some real. I'm not going to get into the psychology of what the fuck Phil was thinking, but we are all very disappointed. I don't think there's really a way to excuse around something like this. I mean, again, you got to decide where the line is for you. And nowhere have I heard anybody saying, "Oh, nobody can support that or play that anymore or read that stuff or blah 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 blah." It is not. It is called Serpents. Please do not talk about it in the chat or give the title in the chat. It is called Serpents. I will say it out loud. It is called Serpents Walk. You can find it in. You can find it online, and if you're really that interested and you don't mind this showing up in your search history, just look at the cover, right? Just look at the cover, and it will be completely clear exactly what that is. The same folks that did the Turner Diaries, which is another one of those sort of neo-Nazi fiction, wank fantasy type of things. That's basically used as an indoctrination manual by those people, and which has definitively been linked to, violence and stuff like that. I'm not telling anybody else what to do, by the way. So we're being clear. And I haven't seen, although I'm unwilling to say it hasn't happened, I'm unwilling to say that I have not seen anybody saying you cannot, you cannot like this work anymore because the guy that wrote it was a douchebag. I have seen a lot of people saying for themselves, hey, I have to consider, my long-term fandom of this material, given the, brand new revelations that have come out about the author. I have a large collection of Tekkamul material, and including some rare stuff, including the original Empire of the Petal Throne, which is worth a decent chunk of money. And I have one of 30 special edition pre-press copies of Mitlenjal, which was signed by Barker. I didn't ask him to sign it, but I ordered it, and it came signed, which I suspect I might be able to get roughly $1,000 for. It's very rare, up to now. So, I have two or three copies of the Guardians of Order game, which is worth a couple of $100 according to eBay. So I'm invested. I consider Barker to be a huge world building influence on me. So I haven't made a decision to say I'm never talking about this again or anything like that. I'm still kind of thinking it over. I'll make that decision for myself, just like everybody else gets to make that decision for themselves. So, you can, to some extent, I am willing to, and this is where I was going with the line. Where is the line, right? This is not, what's a better example? An author who has, sexual misadventures or something like that aren't sexual assault. You might consider that you might have a lower opinion of that author, and everybody's got to decide where this line is. And there's a big gap between this guy was an asshole and this person wasn't, by as far as we can see, an actual card-carrying neo-Nazi. Was also, turns out, lending credibility to a Holocaust denial organization via putting his name on the review board, sort of his name. I'm not going to speculate on the psychology of that because, man, that's a weird situation. M.A.R. Barker spent a lot of his educational years in South Asia, converted to Islam. M.A.R. was born Philip Barker in Spokane, Washington, I think, and legally changed his name to Mohammed Abdul Rahman Barker, and was known professionally as M.A.R. Barker. And married somebody from South Asia, and so what was going on with Phil's head, I have no idea. And I never interacted with him personally, so I don't feel at all qualified to even assess his demeanor during the couple of times that I met somebody like, say, Gary Gygax, right? I can give you an assessment of Gygax as a human being just based on having actually interacted with him in person more than once. Now, I might be wrong, too. That's fine. But I can't do that with Barker. So I have no idea what he was thinking. What the fuck, Phil? Seriously. Anyway. So, hopefully nobody has shown us their ass in the chat here. Let's... So the slip of my own worst enemy. Thanks for stopping by. The slip of paper about the dice color was hilarious, but then I saw the actual one. Strelnikov mentions if he can put up with Triumph of Chaos, he can put up with any errata, and I actually agree with that in terms of just strictly errata. Triumph of Chaos has a monstrous amount of errata. Now it's also kind of the definitive game on the Russian Civil War by many accounts. So, I would just as soon not. Let's not do that. Please don't mention the H person in the chat. Thank you. No, nothing against anybody that did that. You didn't know, I didn't tell you, but don't do that. So, There is a little bit of errata for Pacific War, but Pacific War is a huge and complicated game. None of there is some counter errata, which is a bit irritating, but there's so many excess counters in the game anyway that you can literally take the errata counters, the misprinted counters, and throw them away and not notice. So I don't really have and none of the other errata is serious. So I am very comfortable with the amount of errata in Pacific War. Let me put it that way. So, Jeff is probably talking about Yukon. Yeah, I guess that's not happening anymore. Yeah. WOT. WOT. Why am I drawing a blank on that? I guess I'm drawing a blank because I'm thinking Wheel of Time. World of Tanks, I imagine, is what John's talking about. Is it spelled loyalist? Where's the counter sheet? That's right here. Yeah, that is a typo. That is not a big deal, but it is a bit embarrassing. So yes, the word loyalists is misspelled on the counters. So, oops, not a big deal. I'm willing to deal with that. So I've read. I don't know if I read the books 4, 5, and 6, but I've read the first 3, and Man of Gold was okay. Flame Song was better, in my opinion, but it's definitely pulpier. It's much more of a pulp adventure. So you kind of had to know that going in. Honestly, I could do a whole show on this, and I'd prefer not to tonight. So Barker had a falling out with Daw Books that had been his publisher for Tecmo, for the Man of Gold and Flame Song. And I think that's due to the Raymond Feist situation. There was a lot of tension between Barker and Raymond Feist because Barker felt that Feist had ripped him and Tecmo off in the Rift War series. And, I know he was enduringly bitter about that. Barker was enduringly bitter about that. Feist was kind of like, yeah, kind of didn't know that. And I find Feist's story very reasonable and believable. So, I think Phil made a little too much hay about it. So, but, that's me. I think we're going to have a little bit of trouble fitting all this stuff in a box, in one tray. Let's see. Oh, dear. There's some errata with Victory Games, the GMT Vietnam now, too. Okay, so while I was gone, I had, a bunch of time, about 5 or 6 hours on the way out and another 3 or 4 hours on the way back of, time in flight, time in the airport, blah, 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 blah. So I started reading the Max Hastings Vietnam and Epic Tragedy without having kind of put together that it's got some issues as a book and Hastings has some issues as an author. But I got through most of it, actually, and so I had never read a book about Vietnam before, right? So I not a topic I considered myself particularly well informed on, and the Hastings book was a start to kind of catching up on that. Chim Chim 812. So if you want a current replay of, so if you're asking for a game like Avalon Hills Africa Corps, does that exist now? I think the game you look at is actually probably that North Africa 41 coming from GMT. That's a comparable scale. If you can get the Dark Sands from Ted Racer, that might be a good one to take a look at. That's got kind of a disconnected map, which I don't like as just a stylistic thing. But I do see the sense in it in that particular game. It does actually make sense. So those are kind of the things I would look at if that is what you are asking. Doug, thanks for stopping by. Enjoy RuneQuest. I was, at one point, I was going to do some video on Tecmo. I guess that's almost certainly not happening now. Interesting. So, it's not like I don't have a full slate of stuff to do. John C. No Retreat North Africa. I don't think that's in print right now. So it is I'll be honest, the only one of those games I think I can recommend is probably the Russian Front one. And that's not because I think the rest of them stink. It's because I have not managed to parse that system yet. So I would, and it's a kind of card-driven, card-managed type of thing. I'd be reluctant to put it in the same category. I don't think it's the same kind of game as Avalon Hills Africa Core. Let me put it that way. I think that's a statement we can get behind. Oh yeah, so let's remember that. Thank you, John. I have a reminder in the outline to say this stuff, and I forget about half the time. So yes, please do subscribe to the channel. Please do like the video, and if you'd like to help support the channel, please check out the Patreon or the merch store or the Ko-Fi. So. Kaiser Willie, first of all, thanks for stopping by. I have not played The Lamps Are Going Out, but I've talked to people who have, and it is a very good reputation. Outstanding, Jacob Guernsey, GCACW, GBACW. Start with small scenarios in both cases. Every GCACW game has small scenarios to start with, and a lot, not all, but a lot of the GBACW games do as well. Certainly Death Valley has a wealth of smaller scenarios, as does Into the Woods. So we might be clipping that next week. I don't have a schedule slot for Into the Woods at this exact moment, so... Strelnikov mentions The Last Valley, the definitive book on Dien Bien Phu. Bernard Fall's book on the French colonial period, or the first Indochina War period, was recommended to me. That's one of the books that Max Hastings, let's say, borrowed from. That is on the radar. And for that matter, another obvious choice is a Hal Moore's book, We Were Soldiers. So, and, I should probably watch the movie again, because it's been a long time since I've seen the movie. The movie is available on streaming on Paramount Plus, actually, which I am currently subscribed to. I did watch, but I guess we'll mention this. I did watch kind of a lot of... I will give you a warning. Thanks, Panza. Thanks for that recommendation. And he's right. GCACW has lots of one-day scenarios. However, if you start off playing exclusively one-day scenarios, then you might get into the bad habit, because you have 4 fatigue levels to work with, and you don't have to worry about using those units on days 2, 3, and 4 of running all the units down to up to 4 fatigue. And that's a very bad habit to be in if you are playing a scenario that has more than one day. So be aware of that. So I do recommend moving on to 2 and 3 turn scenarios at some point. Mashing P asks about the complexity of the OSG Napoleonics series. So that's the so we're talking about the Library of Napoleonic Battles, okay? That's what I'm talking about, and I think that's what you're asking. The complexity's pretty low. I think a 24. Am I right about that? I just unboxed this damn thing. I should just know. But of course I don't. I've forgotten already. I think it's a 24-page rule book. The game-specific rules are fairly minimal. And it's a really like tried. Yeah, it's 24 pages, fairly large print for the most part, decent number of illustrations. It's not a complicated game system. It's got very traditional mechanics to the point that some people feel like it's dated, but I don't agree with that. It's got a push-pull CRT, meaning there's a lot of retreat results on the CRT that a lot of people don't like, but at the scale that this simulation happens at, I think is appropriate. So, so the complexity is not particularly high. Almost all the battles can be played relatively quickly. I mean, there's obviously small ones and big ones. The Four Lost Battles are all kind of smallish. Jeff Beeler, what are the best war games on Vietnam? So other than... So what Vietnam games have I played? I'm not sure I've played any Vietnam games other than A Hot Dry Season, which is great, and you should go pre-order it from Legion War Games. And the Victory Games Vietnam, which I've played a couple scenarios of, and which is also really good. Platoon Leader is one that had come up in my looking. Jim Ozarski, yes, I talked to Kevin today about that. I have a replacement box coming for The Last Success. I have managed to bully Kevin into selling me one of the few remaining boxes. Silver Bayonet. So, Steve, thanks for stopping by. Silver Bayonet is supposed to be good, and it was one that I kind of pigeonholed in my mind as a tactical game, and that turns out to maybe to have been a misestimation. Yes, I was wrong. Year of the Rat. Oof, well, the good news on Year of the Rat is you can get a copy pretty cheap. So, like you say Napoleon 3 times real fast, and Jim shows up like fucking Haster. It's amazing. So, I think we're just putting all the French in the same container here. In my opinion, La Bataille is more trouble than it's worth. Now, if you want like a super detailed tactical game, if you want a monster game series on individual Napoleonic battles, then Labatt is the choice, right? It is the standard. The Library of Napoleonic Battles games, and by extension the other related games like Napoleon's Last Battles, are, kind of grand tactical. They fit in a kind of an odd scale space, but it's a space that works with the game mechanics. And you can, they're more, because of that scale choice, the games are more, I don't want to say modular, but you have more flexibility in terms of size of the game that you're actually going to play. You can play a very small scenario like La Coruña, which is in one of the Peninsular War volumes. It's in Napoleon in Spain. This one, the L'Armée d'Espagne, which is not the name of the game. But interestingly, we have Spanish counters here in War for America because we have the Caribbean, which is pretty cool, I think. So you could play really small battles that will probably take, players with some experience an hour to an hour and a half to play, up to quite large battles like Borodino or battles like Leipzig, which will probably take quite a lot longer to play. Not to say that, to also add to that, add the campaigns, which you can get in a game. Even Bonaparte and the Quadrilateral has a big campaign game that puts a couple of the maps together. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of your footprint, right? And the playability is high, the replayability is high. You get a lot of scenario variants. There's a lot of stuff, a lot to like in that series. So, Vietnam, yes. We've talked a little bit about Vietnam. Gordon says he hasn't found a Vietnam game that he thought was definitive, either operational or strategic. So there's not many operational games. And furthermore, I think the Victory Games Vietnam is one of those games with an indistinct scale where it's an kind of operational, kind of strategic. That is a scale choice that was made a lot back in the day and still gets made a lot of games that are strategic games, technically, sort of, or get called strategic games, but they have a lot of operational decision making in them. You can decide for yourself whether you think that's a good idea or a bad idea, but Victory Games Vietnam is definitely one of those games. And I think it is definitive, but in part it's because there is so little competition in that space. The other strategic level games, which include some very good games, in Fire in the Lake is the one I'm thinking of specifically. That's a very good game, and I was looking through the rules because I kind of had the electronic version of the rules with me on my tablet when we were out of town. So I pawed through that a little bit too. And boy, I want to play. I haven't had a chance to play that yet. I do want to play that. But I mean, that's such a completely different game than the Victory Games Vietnam, right? So it's, I think, very difficult to, with a straight face, compare those two. Panza Hearts and Minds. Hearts and Minds is, so there's Hearts and Minds, and there's another one that is also a pretty abstract Vietnam game. So if I didn't say this, Jim Wozarski, thanks for stopping by the way. Might have to put the French and the Spanish together. So I've heard good things about Silver Bayonet, and it's, I believe, still available. The new edition is still available from GMT. So I actually might. I'm really trying not to spend any more money right now, but I might pick that up. Jacob Guernsey, I'll let Stigler weigh in, but I'd say New Market. I think New Market's good. It's nice and small. I am also looking forward to seeing Winter's Victory. I have not pre-ordered it, though, and I'm unlikely to. I am much more likely to decide once it's out and people are gushing about it that I need it. I've also heard that the skirmishers are kind of busted in Wellington's Victory, but I've never played either version of Wellington's Victory, so I don't even know. Stigler says first Kernstown or first Winchester. So, but there's a wealth of small scenarios to build up to, and bigger scenarios to build up to in Death Valley. I think it's Third Winchester's quite big. Cedar Creek's pretty big. So you can get some nice meaty games in Death Valley. Plus, there's plenty of introductory stuff or smaller footprint stuff that you can play relatively quickly. Pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff. Not as good as the Bowmore 15, I got to tell you. I did check Binny's, which is a Chicago Metro liquor store chain, to see if they had Bowmore 15, and they do have a Bowmore 15-year-old that's a sherry cask finish that's about $100 a bottle, which it was good enough that I'd probably pay $100 for that stuff, but I don't know that this is the same stuff, so I'd kind of like to get a sense of what it costs before committing to buying it anywhere. So Vietnam is a conflict that highlights a thing that I say a lot, when talking about the history as opposed to just the games, which is that it's really, really complicated, right? It has been said, and this is at least quoted in the Hastings book, of it's a war that nobody involved deserved to win. And that's probably true. That's, true of the U.S., true of South Vietnam, true of North Vietnam. So, drizzly. I don't know that we have that in Ohio. Good question, though. I don't know that we have... I'd have to mail order booze, and I'm not sure I could even do that. I think I'd have to have it shipped via courier or FedEx or something like that. I don't think you can ship booze through the post office. Yeah, Stigler's right about that. He says Vietnam was a great illustration of the fallacy of the American arrogance that says they can just barge in wherever we please and have their way. I mean, I think it was an assumption that because of American firepower, American victory was assured, and it turned out that firepower was not the deciding factor. The Americans almost always had fire superiority at all levels in Vietnam. I'm sure we don't have liquor delivery. I mean, we barely have liquor stores here in Ohio. The liquor. I've complained about this in the past. The liquor landscape in Ohio sucks. I looked for Bowmore on the Ohio. So you can actually go. One of the very few nice things is you can actually go to the Ohio Liquor Control website and search for liquor brands to see what you can get in Ohio, and there is literally no Bowmore available anywhere in the state of Ohio. And it's not like they're new. That distillery's been around for centuries. So Iggy Crichtal says Drizzly is Uber Eats for alcohol. Gordon's right about, he says that Vietnam is a lot of different kinds of fighting, and he doesn't think they had this one weird... That's true, right? There is a lot of different kinds of action in Vietnam, and part of the problem is that nobody, put that together. So, we're going to have to compactify this. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to fit this in one tray. And we need to fit this in one tray because 2-inch, a game in a 2-inch box, you can get one counter tray in the box and a deck of cards. And not more. And the counters are a bit oversized. All the counters are at least a bit oversized, and there's a small number of even more oversized counters. So, Mike Anthony says that Ken Bird's Vietnam is free on PBS if you donate. That's interesting. Peter Rushton. That sounds like the same stuff that Binny's has. Oloroso is a sherry cask. So, that sounds like the same stuff that Binny's has for $100. But I'd expect it to be cheaper in the UK. So, Lord knows if I ever get to the UK, that's what I'm doing. I'm buying myself a ton of booze and shipping it back here. I did have... I had a couple of beers, and we had some champagne for when we were at dinner, and I had a decent amount of rye whiskey. So that was all very enjoyable. I'm still feeling like I don't have enough compartments here. Put the Spanish and the French in the same compartment. I will check out the Ken Burns Vietnam, because why not? John Longsher mentions that I can get 6 large cases of Sprite at Costco for $80, which he's right, of course. But I don't like Sprite, so there's that. Captain Asparagus got an ad in the mail with coupons for door grass. Something I expected, because I see it here, is a huge amount of weed smell in Seattle. And while I won't say I didn't smell it at all, it was not overpowering. Whereas here it often is, and it's very irritating here, where it's still technically illegal. Check out Vietnam HD as well. There's a fair number of Vietnam tactical games, right? There's the Lock and Load Vietnam Tactical. I don't hate Sprite. It's not like I won't drink it or I have some religious objection to it. I just don't normally drink it. It's got no caffeine in it. What's the point? I like caffeine. I did have some pretty good coffee out in Seattle, by the way, which, is a thing you expect. No, I don't think it's the same at all, John. So looks like we are going to have a bit of a light night. We topped out at 95, so unless we have a big spike here, which is unlikely at this point, we're probably going to have a light night. But that's okay, right? So we'll be back on Monday. Front Towards Enemy, yeah, that's another one. That's been pretty well received. That's from MMP and Joe Chacon. Another Vietnam tactical game. But I'm just not really all that interested in a Vietnam tactical game, to be honest. Obviously, I need to do the Scottish whiskey trail. I didn't go to any distillery. I had a Whistle Pig was the featured. So we got flights of Whistle Pig. I think it was a 10, 12, and a 15-year-old Whistle Pig rye, and it was very rye, but it was good. And I like rye whiskey a lot, so I enjoyed it much more. My wife tasted them all. Gum Alley, I don't know what that even is. We weren't there that long, so. I've been to Seattle before. We were there about 10 years ago or so. And we did interesting things there, like go on the Duck W's that were at the time. You could take a Duck W tour of Lake Union. I think one sank, and they had to discontinue that. But these are the same Duck W's that were used at D-Day, right? So, World War II era vintage vehicles. And it was pretty cool. So I am very glad to have had the opportunity to do that. And we took the ferry over Puget Sound and all that stuff too. So, Mac and Jack's, no. So I have gotten my wife's approval, by the way, because she works for a company that is in Seattle, for us to both fly out to Seattle next February, and I'll go to Game On for the week, and she'll work for the week. I have gotten her approval to do that, but unfortunately, it's like the week before Winterfest, and it is very unlikely to happen just because of timing. So, John C. says that Chad and Kai revealed that they were considering a Combat Commander Vietnam. I think that would have been popular. I'm not a fan of Combat Commander, though, so I am perhaps not the audience for that, even aside from not really wanting another tactical Vietnam game. There's the Lock and Load one, which I think I've already mentioned. There's Boots That's not the game I'm thinking. Ashley, I was thinking of Boots on the Ground. That's not the game I was thinking of. I haven't met Joe, so it's possible some year, Steve. Just I've seen the schedule for next year, and it ain't happening next year. So, my wife would love to move to Seattle. By the way, I could talk her into that literally tomorrow, and that would not be difficult at all. That sounds disgusting. The Gum Alley. No thanks. Don't trip in Gum Alley, apparently. I mean, I don't see why, if you like Combat Commander, I don't see why you couldn't, maybe, Nom 65 by Mark Walker. Yeah, that's a good call, too. King's Critters. I'm not sure I noted that Kai had done a game on her own. If so, it's probably worth checking out. Yeah, we've looked. The real estate prices in Seattle, not even in Seattle, but like all over the area, are just absolutely asinine. Jeff Beeler, we have mentioned Fire in the Lake several times. And that's another one that I have. I've had Hearts and Minds too, but I gave it a look and watched some video on it and decided that it was not going to be for me. So I passed it along to somebody else. I can't remember if I sold it or gave it away. It might have been one or the other. So, in any event, I do not have it anymore. I also had Vietnam Rumor of War, which is the Adam Starkweather operational series. The follow-up to Korea. There's some people that didn't like Korea, let me put it that way. And I looked at that as well and decided I wasn't going to get to play it, so I got rid of that. I'm a bit regretting that now, to be honest. But it is, frankly, a game I would be unlikely to have played, so there's that. We are very close to having this all punched and clipped, by the way. Lots of Air War material. Good call. Actually, I meant to mention that because there's a section in the book I was reading about that Air War over Hanoi. So, yeah, that's the great thing about, one of the nice things about living in Ohio, despite the many, many, many downsides, is that the cost of living, the housing cost is really low. The cost of living on the West Coast is not that high, other than the housing cost. That's where you really get annihilated. Otherwise, some things are cheaper, right? Booze is cheaper in California than it is in Ohio, for example. I have to tell you, I am not really looking at the NCAA tournament. Somebody mentioned Year of the Rat up quite a while ago now, actually, and that might be an interesting one to look at because that game was released when the Vietnam War was still happening. It was released in 1972. Now, I'm sure it looks terrible, but although I haven't really looked at pictures of it, so maybe it's better than I think it is. But, 1972, you don't expect a lot, right? So it would be very interesting to see exactly what that game has to say based on the fact that it's, was contemporary at the time. So, Mike Anthony says that the prices for real estate have doubled in greater Seattle area since COVID started. I don't know that that's a causal relationship, though. I think that has... I think that... I don't know that that's caused by COVID. Let me put it that way. I've just got a restart notification. That's great timing, but it's not forcing me. Yeah, San Francisco Bay Area real estate's worse. I know that, but that place is just crazy. Tim Zales, first of all, welcome back. He has Victory Games Vietnam, Hearts and Minds, Room of War, Heroes of the Nam, which is the lock and load game, and feels like he has it covered. Might add Fire in the Lake when it's reprinted. So, I mean, I do like the coin games. I feel like the coin games fill a nice niche between, they're deep and detailed games without being monster games, and I think that's fairly attractive. The playtime's not super duper short if you're playing like the whole thing, but necessarily it depends on the game. Some of the games you really don't necessarily want to play the full length game, like Gandhi, for example. I think the one of the shorter, I forget which one, but one of the shorter scenarios in Gandhi is actually better because you skip a lot of early setup stuff. So there is an expansion that adds to the end of Fire in the Lake, which is Fall of Saigon. There's an expansion that adds to the beginning of Fire in the Lake, which is Sovereign of Discord. Plus there's the Trung Bot, which is the solo system, which I think is out. And then isn't there another Vietnam thing with Fire in the Lake that's coming too? Am I forgetting something about that? I might be thinking of the bot, which I thought was out. I could be wrong about that. There's actually a lot of gaming in Seattle, right? So I don't feel like I would be really dying for gaming if I were to move to Seattle. Let me put it that way. I might be dying because I'm living in a fucking box, but because that's all you can afford. But that's a different question. There's plenty of gaming happening out there. Marty, I think you got something there. The complexity of a war game with the simulation value of a euro. That's kind of accurate, I think, to be honest. Andrew Franca, thanks for stopping by. Michigan. Well, housing costs in Michigan are pretty low too, but that's because the houses come with free bullets. So there's that. Yeah, so I mean, I've been keeping an eye on Steve's stuff and Justin's stuff and stuff like that, and Game On, and there's plenty of wargaming happening up there. So I wouldn't have the OCS opportunities that I have here in Central Ohio, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean the cost of living is just nutty. The same house that costs now, right? Because your prices now that cost $200,000 or $250,000 in Ohio is like a $500,000 house in Seattle. So I mean that's a huge thing, and you gotta have a job out there too. And while my employer is willing to for me to work remote part of the time, I don't know that they're willing for me to work that remote all of the time, right? They do have an office in the Seattle area, so. Yeah, Marty, I'm talking about Detroit. So. John has Fire in the Lake, Silver Bayonet. I'm really looking at Silver Bayonet, actually. While we wait for Hot Dry Season to come out, which I've played. There's video on the channel on that if you want to take a look at that. We did some interview stuff with Pat, the designer. It's a really neat game. I really like the way it works. It very elegantly handles all the hidden stuff that you think you're gonna inevitably end up with in a Vietnam game. Well, Marty, that's where I'm looking. I'll tell you that. Real estate prices in Ohio have gone up a lot too, just not as much. Okay, so Jeff mentions the Trung Bot came out in 2020. Yeah, okay. So lots of expansion material for Fire in the Lake. And I think there's a pretty good chance we will play Fire in the Lake at Buckeye Game Fest too. That's kind of what I'd like. That I suggested that before I read the book. So yeah, I'm not living in Texas. No thanks. Purple Haze. Yeah, I did not kickstart that though. I would not be looking in Seattle, or probably even on that side of the Sound. I'd be looking over in on the Bremerton side. So bear that in mind when I say that. And that is an hour ferry ride away from Seattle. I enjoyed. I mean, I was on vacation, so I was like on my way to work every day. But I enjoyed the ferry ride. I thought it was pretty cool. It was relaxing. It was kind of like taking the bus, except you can get up and walk around and go get a sandwich and all that stuff. So I actually thought the ferry was pretty cool. Jeff Beeler says Detroit real estate is fairly cheap, but there are issues with living in the city. Yes, the issue might be that you might get shot. So. No, it's not even about that. I wouldn't want to live in Texas based on the friggin' heat. Ugh, no thanks. I'd rather stay in Ohio than live in Texas. Although in the big parts of Texas, you get the major cities like Austin or Houston or Dallas, which we did fly through Dallas actually on this trip. You do get those are good food cities, so there's at least that. And that's a great way to sell me on that. We ate really good in Seattle. Justin recommended Serious Pie, which is downtown, which was really good. So we ate there. I'm trying to figure out how to get all this in here. Their appetizers were actually, the pizza was really good, but the appetizers were equally good. So I was very happy with that. Elliot's was really good. Elliot's is not the kind of place you would go eat at all the time. That's for sure. Because it was fairly expensive, but it was good. We got some Chinese food that was random takeout Chinese food, but was frankly 100% worlds superior to anything you can get in friggin' Ohio. So, and I say that as somebody who has been to San Francisco and eaten in Chinatown, and the Chinese place, random Chinese place that we had in Seattle was actually better. Not that I think we necessarily got the best of Chinatown either, but still. The new You've Moved to Ohio support group. No, I'll have to check that out. That sounds hilarious. And I really love the Pike Place Market. We have sort of a public market here in Columbus, the North Market, but it's really more of a place. It's kind of a place where there's a bunch of food stands, right, rather than of prepared food, right? And there's some good places in there. But man, it's a tenth the size of North Market. It doesn't have any of that other stuff. There's some like grocery options at North Market in Columbus. There's a cheesemonger that's very good, and I love North Market. Don't get me wrong, but it is not even the same type of experience as Cleveland's West Side Market, which is closer to what you would get at what you see at the Pike Place Market. So, but I mean, even then, it's way smaller and has way less stuff and way less variety of stuff, and there's like a lot of really good places to eat at Pike Place Market. there's plenty of good food at North Market here in Columbus too, right? And Columbus is not the worst food town. As you know, people come into Origins. I think when I did a pre-Origins show at one point, we talked about all the different food options that you have down there, right next to the convention center, and North Market is one of those things. And I reliably go over and eat at North Market a couple times every Origins. Boy, I would have loved. Oh, you definitely can't get beef on weck in Texas. You can't even get beef on weck in Ohio. And for those who don't know, beef on weck is like a roast beef sandwich on a weck roll, which is like a roll. It's like a German American style roll with covered in salt and caraway seeds. It's awesome. Buffalo Wild Wings, which is one of the branches that grew out of the old BW3s, Buffalo Wild Wings and Weck, used to have a Weck burger on a Weck roll, which wasn't a beef on Weck, but it was still, it was on a Weck roll. I love Weck rolls. You can't get them here. You can get them in Pennsylvania, you can get them in Chicago, but you can't get them here. I'd have to make my own friggin' Weck rolls. Moy's Chinese, I gotta try Moy's, actually, because I've never eaten Moy's, and it's supposed to be really good. So, Moy's is down by campus, and I'm really, disinclined to go deal with that, though. Indiana and their famous deep-fried brain sandwiches, so there's that. I haven't done the tray labeling on Pacific War yet, but because I might move that to counter trays, but I need counter trays and a box to put them in. Yeah, beef on weck is awesome if you can get it. So we got about half an hour left, and I have finished clipping War for America, and it was like three and a half counter sheets or something like that. I thought maybe it was 2.5. I think it was 2.5. So that's ready to go. So that's awesome. Unboxing video for next week is already ready to go. You can Google Stigler. You can Google it. It is spelled the exact way that you're spelling it. It's called a Weck roll. So we got the unboxing video for Bonaparte and the Quadrilateral coming on next Thursday, by the way. The video didn't quite make yesterday for the scheduled unboxing, so I released the War for America today. So, I can get good Braunschweiger here. We have an old German. We might talk about food the rest of the show. And I'm hungry. We have an old German American butcher shop here in Columbus called Thurn's Specialty Meats that makes all kinds of interesting things like house-made head cheese and stuff like that. And I don't know about anybody else's head cheese. That's the only place I've ever had head cheese, and it was delicious. They have all kinds of interesting liverwursts and stuff like that. So I can get that stuff here. Panda Express. I go to Panda Express kind of a lot because it's right around the corner, but it's terrible. It really is terrible. It's not reasonable. Nobody would be fooled into thinking like it's authentic Chinese food, right? But it's even by that standard, it's pretty bad. So Mountain View. I've been to Mountain View. My wife's got family in Mountain View. So. And Seattle. So, Hissy Cat Studio, welcome back. I didn't get to In-N-Out. I did go to Jack in the Box when we were out in California like 10 years ago. Pre-punched counter sheets. They're not pre-punched. They're self-punching. They're self-punching counter sheets. So, I pick the sheets up. The counters all just fall out. I'm like, well, the die cutting is great. Frick's Quality Meats brand of Braunschweiger. I love liverwurst, of which Braunschweiger is one type. So I will be happy to eat that. Now this is the first time I've had this. We had this tasting plate up at the place at the top of the Space Needle. And the four things were, they had a smoked Wagyu ribeye, which was really good. Now, none of these were large portions, right? You got like an ounce of smoked Wagyu ribeye. They had a beef tartare, which was really interesting. I've never had beef tartare before, and they had a a foie gras terrine with some kind of maple glaze on it. So I'd never had foie gras before. It's another liver product, and it was interesting. I didn't. My wife aggressively disliked it. I didn't hate it, and I would try it again. We do have a fair number of decent German restaurants here in Columbus. There is, of course, German Village. We're not that far from Cincinnati. There's, of course, Schmidt's Sausage House, which is down in German Village. That's pretty good. I think it's a little overrated, but it's still pretty good. I prefer the Hofbrauhaus, which has a location here now as well. There's a Wurst beer here. So there's, we don't go get German food all the time, but we do occasionally go get German food. So Fred Schaefer says that a good bourbon is way better than Scotch. I don't agree with that, but a good bourbon is a lot cheaper than a good Scotch. So, dollars to donuts, if that's absolutely true. A good bourbon is better value for money than good Scotch, but the prices on bourbon have inflated in recent years too. John, I don't know why you would go to Panda Express, to be honest. You've got Filipino food to eat. You don't need Panda Express terrible Americanized Chinese food. Chinese-ish food. They should have that on the sign. Panda Express Chinese-ish food. So I like liver. I don't know that I want to eat it every day necessarily, but that's true. If you are going to get a lot of starch and potatoes if you eat a lot of German food. Now, like I said, I go to Panda Express. It's kind of crap, but it's also easy to deal with. We actually at Winterfest went to a Vietnamese restaurant called Mekong, and it was quite good. I love Vietnamese food. I would eat Vietnamese food all the time. Oh, there was a venison tasting course as well that I was a bit forgettable. Actually, it was okay, but it was like, venison. I like venison. I've never had a proper banh mi sandwich, actually. I went to a restaurant called Banh Mi that did not have banh mi. So I was like, what's up with that? Panda Express is considerably worse. It's considerably crappier than Olive Garden. I'm not a big supporter of Olive Garden necessarily, but Olive Garden is halfway decent Italian American food, at least. Now, I will eat organ meats. I like what I like actively like, and will eat if I see it on a menu. What are in Spanish called mollejas. In English, you can't get them anymore in most places unless you go to a specialty butcher. They're beef sweetbreads. And those, it's a gland in the cow's neck, which is very good if cooked properly. I really like that. I have had so I hilariously looked for Indian restaurants in the vicinity of Winterfest, and the nearest Indian restaurant was like 42 miles away. So no easy to get to Indian restaurants, but there's decent Chinese, there's decent Thai, and there's apparently decent Vietnamese. So there's like that Italian sausagey type of, Italian American eatery type of place that has spaghetti and pizza and stuff like that. That's literally right next door to the convention. So I would totally try haggis if I were, but I'm not gonna do anything insane like get canned haggis or something like that. That's got to be gross. But if I was like in Scotland, I would absolutely want to try haggis. There's a game meat restaurant around here that specializes in game meats. I mean, at one point I did drink a fair amount of bourbon and or American rye whiskey, and a little bit of Canadian rye too. And those are good, and the price point can be really attractive. But I'm also disinclined to drink those neat, where I will drink Scotch neat. So that's a taste thing. It's a personal choice. But generally, to get a really easy drinking Scotch that you can easily drink neat and be like, wow, that's really easy to deal with. You generally need to spend about $50, and you can get a palatable bourbon for quite a bit less than that. John Longshore says that the Olive Garden in Sandusky was amazing. We go to Olive Garden from time to time. The soup's good. The salad's good. The pasta's okay. Their Alfredo sauce is very... I'm not a big fan of their Alfredo sauce. But their chicken Parmesan is great. I mean, it's a fried chicken cutlet, right? It's kind of hard to mess up. But... Balut? No, not eating that. I consider myself a very adventurous eater. I've seen balut. No, I'm not eating that. No, sorry, John. We're not doing that. That looks horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Anywhere on the West Coast is going to have a lot better Asian options than we have here. We also have pretty crap Mexican food here, to be honest. The best Mexican places are like the little food trucks and stuff like that. Generally speaking, the little taco trucks. You can get really good Mexican style tacos from some of the food trucks, and there's a taco place down the street that we go to occasionally that's got very good tacos too. So, recommendations on bourbon. I like Knob Creek. I tend to like rye heavy bourbons because I like American rye. But a lot of like the bourbons that you've heard of are very easy to drink, especially if you're going to drink them on the rocks. Maker's Mark is pretty good. The Angel's Envy is really good. Rittenhouse is a rye. There's a Knob Creek rye too. Bullet's pretty good. Buffalo Trace is pretty good. Apparently people are having trouble getting Buffalo Trace. But, so Buffalo Trace Distillery makes a whole bunch of different stuff, not just Buffalo Trace, including the ridiculously overpriced Pappy Van Winkle. Highly recommended by me is Benchmark number 8. It is young Buffalo Trace. And here in Ohio, it runs about $10 a bottle or a little bit less. And I've had it side by side with Buffalo Trace. I kind of can tell the difference, but it's a third the price of Buffalo Trace too. We had Korean food in St. Louis when we drove through St. Louis. That was pretty good. I like Korean food too. Histycast Studio says his drinking Scotch is Macallan. Macallan is the like a lot of people. I had a bad Scotch experience as a young drinking man with Grant's, which is absolute nail polish remover. So I stayed away from Scotch for a long time. And Scotch does kind of have a lot of Scotch anyway. It does kind of have a characteristic aroma. It would like turn my stomach for a long time. It was Macallan that changed my opinion from I don't really like Scotch or get slightly nauseous when I smell it, to I am now a Scotch drinker. That's the Scotch that started me on that trajectory, which was, wasn't instantaneous, but it was what got me drinking Scotch again. I would be delighted to try fresh durian. I've had preserved durian, which frankly was pretty putrid, but I would like to try fresh durian. I've had caviar. I've had fish eggs anyway. It's more salty than anything else. Ugh. Yeah, John, I'm going to take your word for it. I'm not doing that. The Norwegian fish, people open the can and start gagging. I don't know about that, but there's that preserved shark they make in Iceland. That stuff is supposed to be disgusting, too. I would love to try durian. I can get frozen durians here in central Ohio. I don't know how that affects the texture, though. Jeff Beeler, that sounds like a joke. We have we get a pretty good beer selection here, and if you go to the right places durian is just a fruit, right? It might smell bad. The only reason people are repulsed by it is apparently because of the smell. And I've smelled the preserved stuff, which did not have a really strong smell. It tasted pretty bad. But this is the preserved stuff. I've never had the fresh stuff. Lutefisk. I've never had lutefisk, but I've had like preserved fish product before, and it's not something I like, but it's not like horrifying either. So I would, in principle, be willing to try something like that again. Stigler says it's not a joke. It's Canada. I love Indian food. I could eat Indian food almost every day, frankly. So there's that. Now that we're talking about non-stop food, this is a special edition, so I guess I can talk about whatever I want. I mean, I can always talk about whatever I want. So, smell is a component of taste, but apparently once you've tasted the durian, you can't really smell the same huge, punchy, gasoline-soaked garbage smell anymore. I have not done nearly as much international travel as I would like. But if I was doing a lot of international travel, I would love to go to Southeast Asia. Again, for the food. I'm a food traveler. I was very excited to go to Seattle and have Seattle food, for example. So there's a place that does. There's a Turkish delight store in Seattle that I was kind of tempted to go in because I've never had Turkish delight. It's supposed to be terrible, and that's why we didn't go, because I'm like, I ain't eating that. We're not going there. That's disgusting. But I was always been curious about it. So sea rations are not that bad, but it's like 4,000 calories too. I would enjoy Taiwan. I would enjoy China. I would enjoy really kind of everywhere in the world, with the possible exception of Scandinavia, where the most heinous crimes against food are committed. So, although some of those desserts they have in the cafe at IKEA are pretty good, and Swedish meatballs are fine, but I'm not into preserved fish, so. Now, to the extent that it's just like preserved fish, right? If you get like a fish sauce or a Worcestershire sauce that has anchovies in it, right? That I don't find objectionable at all. I have got fish sauce that I use as a general condiment for things. Does anybody remember the film The Boys from Company C? You can rent it on Amazon. I remember seeing that as a kid. It's actually got R. Lee Ermey in it. And I remember virtually nothing about the film other than that. Achilles says that the MRE pork patty is dog food, which he's probably right. I appreciate that, John. I have never had Filipino food. We cannot get Filipino food here in Columbus, Ohio. It's something I would like to try. I am much more likely to try it first next time we go out to the West Coast, which will happen again. So that is a genetic thing. Mike Anthony mentions that how asparagus makes your pee smell weird. Apparently the ability to smell that is a genetic thing. So some people may not be able to smell the mortifying gasoline, garbage, sewage, onions, durian smell. Stigler says he has a shrimp paste he uses in his udon. Now that stuff, I mean, as ingredients, like that stuff doesn't taste right without that stuff. Cincinnati chili. Yeah. So here's the thing with Cincinnati chili. And I've come to peace with Cincinnati chili. The problem with Cincinnati chili is that it's called chili and not vaguely Mediterranean spiced pasta sauce. It is, in fact, vaguely Mediterranean spiced pasta sauce and not chili. If you see it and you think, I would love some vaguely Mediterranean spiced pasta sauce, with the weird selection of a giant pile of cheddar cheese on top, then I think you'll actually find that it's okay. I found that it's okay. I actually, kind of watched some videos about how it's made and the history of it and stuff like that. It was invented by Middle Eastern immigrants to the Cincinnati area that basically used their flavor profiles to make this meat sauce, which doesn't really resemble chili in any meaningful way, other than that it's got meat in it. And they put it over spaghetti, and it's fine. It's fine. It's just not chili. Oh, I love a good Reuben. I love man. There was a place at the Pike Place Market that had some really impressive looking Reubens, I gotta tell you. But I can actually there is a place here in Columbus where you can get a good legit Reuben. And there's a place in Cleveland too called Slyman's. But frankly, the place here in Columbus, Katzinger's Deli, down on 3rd, I think, is it's just north of German Village, is I think it's better than Slyman's, and Slyman's is really good. I love a good Reuben. E4 Airman says, OSG, you can pre-order the first game they came out with today. Are we talking about Bonaparte Overruns Piedmont? Because that is next year's pre-order, the one that will be released in 2023. That might be what you mean, but that actually, you've been able to pre-order that for about a week now, I think. I love good pastrami. Love good pastrami. Ooh, Hearts of Iron 4 or War Plan. Ugh. If you want a Hex Encounter experience, then you got to go with War Plan, because Hearts of Iron 4 is not that and is very un-wargamey in a lot of ways. You do a lot of micromanagement of production in Hearts of Iron 4, which I found dreary to deal with. The really interesting thing about Hearts of Iron 4 are the decision trees. But then, unfortunately, you have to put up with a lot of unenjoyable game to kind of play with those decision trees. And, of course, it's a Paradox game, so you're kind of dependent on buying tons of DLC. War Plan is pretty self-contained, and there is a War Plan Pacific as well. It's a lot like Strategic Command, but it is better than Strategic Command. It's a relatively straightforward Hex Encounter wargamey type computer game. I have a okay opinion of War Plan. Hearts of Iron 4, I don't like as much as I kind of should, but I really enjoyed Hearts of Iron 3. You can usually get Hearts of Iron 3 for like $10. I highly recommend that. I had a great time playing that. So, Captain Asparagus says, Daly City, south of San Francisco, is the best Filipino food. Fremont, farther south, for Afghan food. I've never had Afghan food. I've had Tibetan food. We have a lot of Somali immigrants here in Columbus, and I've had Somali food, and it's good. I've had Ethiopian food, and it's really good. War Plan on Steam, I assume, is the game we're talking about. I would love to try the Montreal smoked meat sandwich. Dan keeps threatening me that I should come up to Canada. So, Strategic Command is a balls. I think Strategic Command is garbage. It's just the AI is a totally cheating bitch. It's ridiculous. The scale feels off. It's just terrible. I absolutely hated it. William Aaron says that one of his fellow NCOs in the U.S. Army Reserve was one of the soldiers featured in The Boys of Company C. Yeah, the smoked meat, if you're into like American barbecue, which is very heavily smoky, that might maybe not be quite as strong. I really want to get Distant Worlds 2. I just spent all the money. So, there is War Plan Pacific. Now, War Plan Pacific I have more concerns about than I do War Plan Europe because of the naval stuff. I have a feeling that the naval stuff was not going to be satisfying. Yeah, Stigler's a vegetarian or vegan, isn't he? I think, as an American, we probably eat too much meat. I don't feel myself capable of giving it up. But I certainly could, I could eat less. But the point isn't really to eat less meat, it's to eat more it's to eat less meat and less garbage starch by eating more vegetables. So, John Madison, thanks for stopping by for this complete ramble. We have talked a bit about the topic, which is Vietnam. Curry chips, currywurst. I don't like ketchup, but currywurst is pretty, and it's pretty much ketchup with curry in it. the sauce for currywurst. I do actually like that. I wouldn't use it on good bratwurst, but on cheap bratwurst, I absolutely would. Mm. I love scrapple. I love scrapple and geta, our Ohio specialty, which is the best food item to come out of Cincinnati, the Cincinnati area, by the way. Um, you can get it here. It's a little bit hard to find, but you can find it here. Sometimes Aldi even has it. I love Scrapple, man. But Scrapple's got organ meats in it. If you don't like the organ meats, then you might not like Scrapple. Geta is basically exactly like that, except it's just made with pork instead of, random bits and bobs of the animal. But I like liver, so if you don't mind that super irony livery taste, that is a problem. If you most Scrapple, there's probably Scrapple that's not made with liver because people don't like the taste of liver. But I have been to Philly. I did not get a Philly cheesesteak when I was in Philly, and that's an unfortunate decision. We had some kind of seafood restaurant that we went to was, I think, the place I remember in Philly. But when we were there, it was like a record heat wave at the time, which sounds hilarious. Now it was like 105. Now a record heat wave is like 122. But and it was okay, but the food wasn't like super memorable. But what was memorable is that we ate outside and we were all dying. So scrapple everything but the oink. Yes. All the lips and asshole. Absolutely right. Captain Asparagus says they are pescatarians. They only eat fish that eat other fish. Well, you can get shark, actually. I don't know that I've ever eaten shark. Um, I think there was one of the options in one of the restaurants we went to, I think, was swordfish. I think I've had swordfish, and I've definitely had halibut. But I don't know that those are carnivorous fish. You got to get the trick on the cheesesteak is you got to get it with the whiz. None of this provolone stuff. The whiz is the authentic stuff, and it's frankly more flavorful on that sandwich than provolone is. No, the whiz is where it's at on the Philly cheesesteak. I gotta tell you, Stigler. It's weird. I agree with that, and it sounds. I mean, it's inferior cheese, but the inferior cheese works better with the flavor profile of the sandwich. There's a place that we went to in Sandusky that had chicken livers, deep fried chicken livers and gizzards, and hearts, which I was super tempted by. Actually, I didn't want to like a whole order of chicken gizzards though. Cheese Whiz contains cheese. It is a cheese product. It contains cheese, but it is not cheese. Shark fin soup. I'm not a fan of the practice of fishing up sharks and then cutting off the fins and then throwing the dead shark overboard. That's a wasteful practice. I've had no problem with eating shark, but if you're gonna eat the animal, take the whole animal. The whole animal's good. It's not just the fin. That was why I made a point, Jeff Beeler, to get seafood while we were out there. We had fish and chips, rando fish and chips one time, too, and that was really good. So, I mean, you get decent fish and chips anywhere. It's just frozen fish. I mean, Red Robin has decent fish and chips. You know, there's people fighting. Stigler, tonight, there's people fist fighting over that exact question in a bar in Philly. I'm positive I'm correct about that. Cheese Whiz contains trace amounts of cheese-like product. Cheese Whiz is the original cheese for the cheesesteak, though. That's the thing. It's not the provolone. That is true. It is an argument that they have in Philly about whether you get with the Whiz or the provolone. Primanti Brothers. Yeah, that's drunk food right there. It's probably tasty. They used to have a place, a Primanti Brothers clone in Cleveland. I don't know that that's still around. It's basically an overstuffed sandwich with French fries on top, and it's awesome food if you are intoxicated. If you are sober, it is okay. If you are drunk, it's 1 in the morning and you're starving, it's pretty great. Stigler, you don't have to convince us. You got to talk to the people in Philly who keep making cheesesteaks with the whiz on it. That's the problem. It's not up to me to decide what goes on the cheesesteak. It's up to the people in Philly. They like the whiz. So, all right, folks. So, thanks for watching. Everybody that's kind of kept up tonight. I think we did top out at about 95, something like that. So, check out the unboxing video. So, we'll be back on the regular live stream schedule at 8 p.m. Eastern on Monday. We'll be streaming with Dan on Tuesday. That's on this channel. That's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And then Thursday, the video is already scheduled for Bonaparte in the Quadrilateral, and we'll get the new 4 Lost Battles out shortly as well. And I think next week, I don't know what we're going to be clipping. We'll see. I haven't made a decision yet. I really need to order more. I need to get in touch with GMT and order some more counter trays before they run out again, and it's another year and a half. Ivar's was highly recommended, but we went to Elliott's instead. So, but my wife's aunt who lives in Seattle recommended Ivar's. So we will get back there at some point. It won't be another 10 years before we get to go. All right, so I would like to thank everybody for stopping by. Do help support the channel. You can click on the link to the Patreon or the merch store or the Ko-Fi in the video description, so check those things out. Subscribe, thumbs up, all that stuff. Interestingly, nobody subscribed during the show tonight, but you know we were on a weird off night. So, and we got some good recommendations on Vietnam stuff out too. So I am satisfied with that. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody for watching. We'll see you all again on Monday.